Good afternoon and welcome to the Beer Institute, and welcome to our first installment of our web series, You Ought to Know a Beer Industry Employee. I'm Jim McGreevy, President and CEO of the Beer Institute. We are one of the oldest trade associations in Washington, D.C., representing the brewing industry since 1865. There are over 7,000 breweries in the United States today. 2.1 million Americans owe their livelihoods in one way or another to the production, distribution, and sale of beer, totaling nearly $330 billion in economic output, or nearly 1.6% of the U.S. gross domestic product. Beer is an important cultural, social, and economic contributor to our way of life in America. And you're going to hear from one of those 2.1 million Americans who work in beer every day today. Chris Leonard is the brewmaster and operations manager of Heavy Seas Beer in Baltimore, Maryland. A beer industry veteran, Chris has been at Heavy Seas since 2016. Welcome, Chris, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Really happy to be here.
So folks on the web series will be able to ask questions. There's a portal for you to ask questions. I see we already have several. Chris and I are going to just have a little discussion about his job and about Heavy Seas and about beer today. So, Chris, you're the brewmaster. You're the operations manager. It sounds like you're sort of the chief cook and bottle washer at the Heavy Seas over the last 5 years. Why don't you tell us a little bit about a day in the life of Chris Leonard?
Yep, for sure. Actually, coming up on 7 years at Heavy Seas now.
7 years.
Only feels like 5 though. Yeah, we have 25 people that work in our production facility, and I have 5 sub-departments: quality control, maintenance, packaging, shipping, receiving, and of course, brewing. So on a given day, I have to make sure all 5 of those departments are working as they need to be. So we have a full production schedule. We know what beers we're brewing, what beers we're filtering, what beers we're canning, kegging, bottling, etc. What things need to be sampled for microanalysis, what maintenance projects we have, what preventative maintenance needs to be done, and what's going out the door and what's coming in as far as raw materials go. So sort of having an oversight and understanding of everything that needs to happen on a given day to meet our production goals. But from a detailed standpoint, what usually happens is there are some fires that need to be put out. We have some very nice equipment in this brewery. We've done a really nice job over the years of being able to invest in our infrastructure and our technology and our equipment. But something seems to break every day, even some of the best equipment. So just for today, for example, on my way in the morning about 6:45, I get a phone call from one of my brewers that the centrifuge is not working right. Something's going wrong, and he can't troubleshoot it. So I showed up in the brewery and in the office and quickly went over to see what was going on and realized it was something that needed a little more investigation. Might have required a phone call to the centrifuge manufacturer. As it turns out, it didn't. I was able to get enough information from previous experiences and some work in digging into the manual. Walk the guys through, all right, we're going to do this, this, and this to see if this works, and we'll try a few things. And long story short, about 2 o'clock, we had it running again. So I obviously had other things I was popping in and out, including a couple of chats with some other managerial folks. But that was the big, fire that needed to be put out today. And we were successful, and we're right back on track schedule-wise. We got about 3 hours behind, which could cause us problems in the grand scheme of the week, but we should be able to catch up with really very limited discomforts.
Chris, you have an engineering degree from Lafayette College. You are a 23-year or so veteran of brewing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Engineering, sort of it's kind of a typical degree for a brewer, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I find plenty of colleagues that have some type of engineering background, if not chemistry or food science or something like that. Mine was a little more strictly mathematical. Was not a very creative sort of career that I had gotten into. Transportation planning was computer-based, travel demand forecast modeling, things like that. And I realized when I was, had a midlife crisis when I was about 27 years old that sitting in a cubicle for the next 40 years was probably not going to make me too happy. So thought about what I could do that I would do for free, that somebody might pay me money, and realized nobody would ever pay me money to play hockey or guitar. So found out there were brewing schools. So I sort of saved money for a year and packed everything up and went off to Davis, California, and learned how to make beer.
Now you've been a brewery owner. You've been a consultant to brewers. And now you're a senior manager at one of the most well-known craft breweries in the country. That brewing degree has taken you around the world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, what a great way to experience life making beer. Certainly, one of the first jobs I had out of brewing school was in San Diego, and I was there for about 2 years, working in a brew pub in La Jolla, which was a fantastic couple of years of my life. It was a little too easy, frankly, from a work perspective, but from a fun perspective, it was a very nice time in the late 90s to be in Southern California. After that, I did move back east. I'm from the Philadelphia area originally, and started working at a brew pub called the General Lafayette Inn, which I ultimately became the proprietor about 4 years into being there, and then owned it for about 7 after that. Closed it in 2001. Just couldn't make it work. It was just financially just a very difficult endeavor, and did some consulting. I headed down to Peru and installed the first craft brewery in Peru, in a town called Huaraz in the Andes. Sierra Andina is the name of that brewery. Then I went and opened, was a founder of a startup brewery in Houston that was not very successful. I left there quickly after about a year. Actually, it was exactly a year, because I had a contract that expired, and decided I needed to get back east again, and got to Heavy Seas in December 2013, and it's been a fantastic experience, at least from a brewing perspective, and life experience. It's been a great career. I look back on the decision to leave the consulting engineering world and become a brewer. It's the smartest thing I ever did.
I think there's probably there could be a few folks on watching us now have this discussion who would like to follow your career path. You started at Heavy Seas in 2016. I think it was around a 35,000 barrel brewery at the time, now closer to 46 or 47,000 barrels. Heavy Seas and Hugh Sisson, its founder, of one of the founders of craft beer in Maryland. Tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, it's a fantastic history this company has. We're going to see our 25th anniversary in December. Hugh opened Clipper City Brewing Company in this location back in 1995. He and his father were instrumental in getting laws in Maryland changed so that brew pubs could be legal. And his family had a beer bar in the Federal Hill neighborhood of Baltimore called Sisson's. And they installed a small brew pub brewery in that restaurant. And Hugh decided, that the restaurant management world was not for him. And having lived that life myself, I can understand that completely. So he stepped out of Sisson's and into Clipper City, and has been brewing beer in Baltimore here in Halethorpe since 1995.
I see we actually have a number of questions coming in from our viewers here on the webinar, and a number of questions about distribution. So let's start with the production end of making beer. Talk to us a little bit about how you take a concept, how you work with the marketing people, and how you get the beer to the tap room or to the distributor's warehouse.
Sure. When I started brewing 100 years ago or 23 years ago, it was a brewer-driven industry. I made what I wanted to drink and I shared it with everyone. That was sort of the idea when people got out of home brewing and became professional brewers. But really these days, marketing is such a valuable tool in understanding what beers we should be making and should be offering to the public. So we have a 15-barrel brew house here at Heavy Seas that we use for research and development, along with certain beers that are taproom only releases. You have to come to the brewery to get them, to purchase them and consume them. And we use that platform to try out some new things, try some new techniques, new ingredients, new concepts, and really use that as a litmus test as to whether people are going to enjoy this beer. If they're going to enjoy it more than once, you can make a really interesting beer that's really exciting, but doesn't have any staying power. So the tap room and this 15-barrel brew house, which is a small amount of beer relative to what we do in the large scale brewery, which is a 60-barrel brew house that we operate 5 days a week, 24 hours a day. So we'll do one 15-barrel batch every month of some unique product or something that's new, something that might be trendy or has been trendy or we think is going to be trendy, and sort of try it out on our guinea pig, fans that like to come to the brewery and experience what we're coming on with, and hoping they'll see it someday in their local liquor store. So if something is successful, then we talk about whether it makes sense from a production standpoint to even consider making a large amount of that product. It may have an unusual ingredient that's too expensive or too hard to manage or handle. Certain yeast strains are very difficult to work with. So there are a lot of different decision-making parameters that come into play when we say, all right, this beer was so good, everybody loved it, let's make a lot of it and ship it to 15 different states. And usually it requires a good solid year and a half of trials and data that we collect in social media, all the things the marketing folks use to decide whether something is going to be a hit and is going to be a consistent revenue stream for us, or if it's something that's going to be, flash in the pan that just ends up making us all frustrated and tired because we work so hard to do something for it to not be successful.
And you have a tap room, obviously, and you use that tap room to sort of brand beers and see what the public thinks. How do you think, as a brewer, how do you think of the tap room and its importance in the overall operation of the company?
Well, one of the things about it that's really great is in a large scale regional brewery like ours, it can get monotonous working in the brewery. Making the same beers over and over again can sometimes, the challenges of that are more technical, and they're more they're not as fun to explore. So when the tap room says, all right, we're going to make a key lime pie IPA, then that becomes exciting. So every energy level in the entire building sort of picks up because we've got a tap room release coming out, and we'll use it as a bonding opportunity for the entire staff. We'll get together in our tap room before we release it. We'll taste it as a team, as a group. Maybe we'll bring in lunch and a cake or something. We'll give out a monthly, Employee of the Month type award. So we use the tap room not only for consumers to have something new and exciting to try, but also for the brewers and the people in packaging, all the people that are working here tirelessly every day to say, here's a breath of fresh air in the brewery, and I'm part of this, and we just made something really unusual. And wow, look at the line of people outside that came for this. This egg custard snowball beer. Like, who would ever thought we would ever make that, first of all, and second of all, look at how great the reaction is. That makes us feel good. So it's a feel good place. It's a fun, interesting, innovative sort of space, and it's just one of those things that we have it, and we're using it as much as we possibly can. Certainly pre-COVID, we had just a really fun exploration of beer styles and different sort of events.
You all had plans, I think, to sort of expand the tap room before COVID-19 came along. Is that right?
Yeah, this is true. And one of the things that we're going to do right now, as I mentioned, we do these tap room release beers that we only release in the tap room. We had planned to also have sort of brewer's choice beers as well, and maybe I would brew an English style dark mild for my own enjoyment, and it would be available if anybody wanted it, but we wouldn't be looking for that to drive business so much as it would be a comfort beer or something for someone. So that's been a little disappointing, but we shifted to curbside pickup, and that's it hasn't we don't sell quite as much beer as we did when people were coming to the brewery and drinking here, but it's just different. The atmosphere is a little different. We don't have strangers, if you will, in the brewery on a daily basis like we used to. There aren't people coming and telling us how great we are to our face anymore, which is always fun with the tap rooms, the interaction with your customers and the people that enjoy your products. Hopefully things will progress, and a year and a half from now, maybe we'll be talking about that tap room expansion and knocking some walls down and adding some more bar space.
Well, Chris, I'll tell you how great you are. I want to talk a little bit more about COVID-19, but first, there's a couple questions here about distribution. Yeah. How many states does Heavy Seas distribute in?
That's a good question. We pulled back from 2 states last year, but we added one. I think we're 18 states now. More or less, we're East Coast, Florida to Massachusetts, and then we go as far west as Indiana. Ohio is a good market for us also. A little bit in Kentucky, West Virginia, but pretty much up and down the East Coast.
There's a question from one of our viewers asking, any chance of expanding distribution to the West Coast of the USA? I think that's a good question to sort of talk about how a brewery like yours thinks about distribution. Is the West Coast just too far away, or what? How does that work?
Well, we have a good problem right now. We can't meet the demand we have right at this juncture. Our equipment limitations only allow us to produce so much canned beer, and right now the demand for canned beer is so high that we're working at 110% capacity right now just to get everything out the door. So we really aren't pursuing the opportunities to move to new markets at this time. Simply because we're not capable. We're working on some things to make that a possibility, and we may explore that in the future. I don't think we would go far west. I think we would go sort of Midwest first. I know we shipped some beer to Missouri on sort of a one-off kind of thing not too long ago, and I think we sent a tractor trailer load of beer to Arizona a year and a half ago, maybe Wisconsin. Wow. So we explore some things here and there, but right now our focus is on our core markets and the folks right now. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to send beer to Oregon when people in Baltimore can't get our products. So
the economics of distribution far and wide for many craft brewers, it gets difficult. The farther you are from your home base and your tap room, the harder it is to break through in a environment where there's literally thousands of breweries across the country.
Yeah, local is so important now too. I mean, so many people look for local products before they do anything else. So, and until your name is recognized as being as higher quality than a similar product that was brewed locally, it's really hard to gain traction.
Well, speaking of local, some people may not know the name Heavy Seas, but they certainly know the name Loose Cannon. You all are fortunate to have a really popular signature brand that you've done a lot of different things with. Why don't you talk a little bit about the importance of that brand to the business?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, flagship beers were integral to any regional craft brewery's existence and growth, and Loose Cannon was that for this brewery. Certainly accelerated, I think, the output of this brewery from 10,000 to 30,000 barrels in 2 years just from that one product. So the demand for it was great, and the name recognition is wonderful. How sometimes that can be a curse also, because the best selling beers we have outside of Loose Cannon are Double Cannon and Tropic Cannon. So sometimes you don't want to become the Loose Cannon brewery, but at the same time you don't want to fight it either. You want people, whatever part of your brand is recognizable, you want to sort of seize on those simple things. So we're even developing a hazy cannon right now that we're going to release later this year, and I expect it to do really well. So having that sort of name brand locally and regionally, even nationally, it's a pretty neat thing, and we're really fortunate to have it. It's heavy. Loose Cannon is on the decline from a sales perspective, as you probably imagine, just because most of its driving force was on draft, and draft is really a very difficult environment in which to succeed these days. Certainly post-COVID, but even pre-COVID, the fight for tap handle space is brutal in the beer bars and just your local bars, even here in Baltimore. So other products and other things that appeal to a wider range of people, even if it has a Cannon name in it, it still gives us sort of a head start and a little bit of an advantage over some other brands that might be unknown completely.
Let's talk a little bit about COVID-19. Although I will say there's I think a home brewer here on watching our discussion here who's going to ask a question, who has a question that I think will be very fun for you to answer. For small systems, 10 barrels or smaller, which is the best, direct fire, steam, or electric?
Well, I can tell you what the worst is, and that would be electric. No, thank you. But the gas versus steam fire is sort of a subjective question, in my opinion. I ran a 7-barrel direct fire brew house for 11 years, and I loved it. But I was also making really traditional beers in a lot of ways, a lot of traditional English style beers, Belgian style beers, German style beers. And there's something about the direct fire that just, I don't know, just there's something about it. There's something about that burned on caramelization that's a little different than you get when you use a steam kettle. But if you care about money and efficiency, then steam's the way to go. With a small, under 10 barrels, you can get away with direct fire. Larger than 10 barrels, you have to go with steam, in my opinion. But I'm a big fan of direct fire, and if we had gotten a 7-barrel brew house instead of the 15-barrel for our pilot system, I think we would definitely have gone with direct fire.
We'd like to see more of those kinds of questions coming. So if you're making beer
that's
at home,
a romanticism
please ask
thing.
Let's talk a little bit about the impact of COVID-19 on the Heavy Seas beer. You were telling me earlier today that the challenges in the middle of March were great, but you seem to be sort of figuring out how to proceed as this health crisis continues. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what those days and weeks in March and April were like for brewing and for the company in general?
Yeah, it was, as I'm sure everybody felt, it was very scary, at first. We had a senior management meeting, and the controllers going over the budget and the finances and said, well, as long as we ship all this beer this month, we're going to end up here. And I said, you can just forget about all that draft product, because it's not leaving the building. Nobody's ordering draft beer. It's just, all the bars are closed. It's not going to happen. So, that was, oh my goodness, how is that going to affect our production? What are we going to have to do? We're going to have to lay people off. We're not going to have enough work for everybody. So we jumped on the PPP loan right away. Our controller and her assistant, they did amazing work to get us, get applications in and work with our bank really quickly. And what I decided to do was to split the production staff in half. Now we sort of thought that we were going to see a reduction in our production needs to about 50%, maybe 60% of pre-COVID numbers. So we split the production team in half, and we had an A team and a B team, or an away team and a home team, and they stayed home for 14 days, while the other half of the crew worked for 14 days. And we did that from mid-March until the beginning of June. Without the PPP loan, which we ultimately got, I don't think we could have kept those people employed. Now, that we were able to keep them employed was a wonderful thing, because we did not see an enormous drop off. Initially, our distributors cut their orders, but by mid-April to late April, they were right back to pre-COVID levels, at least for off-premise sales. So suddenly we saw a large move towards cans, some shift towards bottles, and basically 100% loss of our draft sales. So we brought everybody back to work in the beginning of June. I personally and our production manager, he and I worked through the whole thing. So we just kind of stayed as socially distant as we could, and sort of stayed on top of everybody, and we got through it. And we're now back to I'd say we're 42 to 45,000 cases of beer leaving the building every month from May through the end of September. We still have, we'll have 45,000 cases going out. And
PPP, very important in those early months of this pandemic.
Oh yeah, we were discussing how we could manage our profit and loss. Like, how can we manage the cash flow with all these people on payroll that aren't working or physically here? And the trick was, can we keep them home and safe, and still pay them, and still produce enough beer and ship enough beer to keep the cash flow moving? And we were able to do it just because I'm fortunate. I have an amazing staff. They work their tails off. They still do, but at that time, I'd say each week we were probably putting out about 70 to 75% of our pre-COVID production levels with 50% of the staff. So, two things: we were able to keep everybody safe, and we were able to keep everybody employed and weather that storm. And we have different challenges now, but that was we wouldn't be having this conversation today if it weren't for that PPP loan.
And you have how many employees?
50.
50 employees. Not a single one of them got sick in the way you deployed the staff.
No, we were really fortunate. We had a couple of scares, a couple of folks who didn't feel well, and a couple of folks who were exposed to known COVID infected people, but they've all tested negative. And we've kept masks on during business hours in the brewery. We kept most, if not all, of our administrative and marketing folks have worked remotely. We've kept Hugh out of the building also, just which always is kind of nice in a way. We love seeing him, but we don't want him giving us too hard of a time. But I'm joking. We've had a rough go, but it's worked out really well.
Well, this is being recorded, so I hope those folks don't come back to haunt you in the future.
It'll be fine. He knows.
What do you think now, 6 months in? What kinds of challenges or concerns do you have, for the next few weeks or months, as long as this keeps going?
Yeah, well, we're seeing some draft business, which is good. We're running the keggers probably twice a week instead of 5 days a week pre-COVID. But nobody's really sure what's going to happen. We're hoping a lot of these canned products that we've seen great acceleration in their sales continue. If they do, we have infrastructure challenges we're going to need to address, and then there are labor challenges too. As we move into cans, it's a much more labor intensive process. So hiring people is something that we're working on right now. And again, the PPP loan's been invaluable in that respect. And some of the other challenges, the tariffs on the cans have been a little tricky. Probably costing us about $50,000 a year in additional costs of cans, which would be an additional employee. And then on the flip side, the excise tax has been great. It's probably allowed us to have 2 employees that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So, just balancing all these things that are happening around us and trying to be predictive and as nimble as possible while we're working here making beer.
You talked about, you sort of touched on two of the political policy issues that affect beer greatly: the craft beverage modernization and tax relief, excise tax relief, which is in its third year now. We're hoping that it will be extended before the end of this year. That meant 2 employees in your part of the operation.
Yeah, at least 2. I think 45,000 barrels, $3.50 a barrel. So yeah, I mean with benefits, and that's one thing about our brewery. Maybe as opposed to some small brewers, our employees do a full benefits, 401k, health plan, all that good stuff, paid vacation. So yeah, at least 2 employees, possibly 3, depending on how they were deployed. But yeah.
So the policies coming out of Washington and state capital and Annapolis there have a direct impact on your business, obviously, too. The tax relief meant some additional employees. That was passed in December 31st of 2017, and then the aluminum tariffs came along in mid-March of 2018, and that affected the business as well, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's a good $50,000 a year. In additional expense that we could have put elsewhere. Yeah.
I don't think you're facing it, but on top of the tariffs, there's a can shortage happening. What do you hear from colleagues and counterparts in other breweries related to some of these sort of shortage issues?
Yeah, I mean, I hear horror stories of delays in can delivery, incorrect cans getting delivered, certainly prices being astronomical. I mean, we've been able to continue to have direct access from our supplier, who's also the producer, but some other folks I've spoken to, similar sized breweries, are dealing with distributors and third parties that are just making their lives very difficult, and sort of makes them have to plan their production around when the cans are going to show up. And yeah, we've been fortunate to not have that problem, but I do understand it's been very challenging for a lot of my colleagues.
We sort of touched on this, but we have a question from a viewer related to the supply chain. How has it changed at the height of the pandemic? Draft is obviously, for a long time, draft sort of went away. You didn't wind up with a lot of spoiled beer, but you had some. What do you see happening in your markets related to the opening of restaurants and bars, and how do you see that playing out down the line?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the turnover is less, right? We don't own our own kegs anymore, so we don't see them come back per se. But we know that a keg of beer that may have gone through a bar in a week pre-COVID might be there for a month now. So we're projecting about a 30%, 30 to 35% of pre-COVID volumes of draft leaving the building. So yeah, I mean, right now we're probably, like I said, we're kegging 2 days a week, whereas we were kegging 5 days a week pre-COVID. So that gives you a basic indication that 40% or so of the draft is back, and whether it's here to stay or if it's going to grow, I think it's really too soon to tell. Economies are opening, economies are closing. Florida opened, Florida closed. Maryland has been kind of a little more deliberate, and we've seen things shut down in Baltimore after they were opened up, and Baltimore still not allowing full indoor dining. So it's actually kind of nice in a way that it hasn't been sort of a turn on the faucet and expect a full shipment of pre-COVID keg numbers. We would not be able to manage that. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what's going to happen, and fortunately, we have usually a 3 to 4 week window in which to react to any major sort of changes in orders and shipments.
Is your tap room open?
Our tap room is not open for on-site consumption. We do curbside pickup, contactless pickup only. We felt it was too risky. I felt it was too risky to bring people into the building that didn't work here and really put our production employees at risk, considering 95% of our revenue comes from wholesale beer, probably more than that. And the curbside sales have not been as robust as in-person sales were, but they've been pretty good. I mean, we were pleasantly surprised with how well that has gone. It's a pretty nice system, and I think a good portion of people, even if bars and restaurants and tap rooms are open, are still choosing to stay home. So we're still seeing them come to get beers of ours that they were drinking before COVID, and we don't have any plans to open the tap room anytime soon.
So tell us about that. Tell us a little bit more about that curbside. I know you try to brand the beers, some of the beers in the tap room. The tap room's closed until further notice. Yet you have had beer releases that have sold out very quickly. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So yeah, we have online ordering, and there'll be our standard beers, if you will, available, and the consumer can choose what he or she wants to buy. And then once a month, sometimes twice a month, sometimes every other month, depends on how the flow of the brewer is working. We'll release a tap room only beer, and social media is integral, obviously, to that sort of excitement. And leading up to it, we'll be sending out teasers and leaking on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter that, for example, a key lime pie IPA is coming. And then you'll hear people start saying, when can I get it? When can you order it? And then we'll put it up for sale on the website, and they'll sell out really fast, like within 5 minutes on a given day. And then the cars don't necessarily line up in the parking lot the way people did before when they would come for a can release. But we haven't had any problems selling through those products when this is the only one of these we're going to make or plan to make at this point. And it's going to be something different, and it's going to be something hopefully great, hopefully really special, and taste good, and people feel included in our exploration of beer, and it works out. It's worked out really well. So we're looking forward to more of that.
Your connection to the community there, in terms of people coming to try new beers, obviously working at the brewery. Being partisans towards your local beer. You mentioned earlier Snowball beer. Snowball is for those on the web who are from the Baltimore area, they know what Snowball is. You're also doing some other collaborations with, I think you said, a candy company at some point. How do you think about that connection, either in making beer or in being a part of the community?
Well, I mean, Snowball is a great example, and it's sort of the beer that how do I put it, got me to buy in to these types of beers, these styles of beers that are not necessarily rooted in beer tradition. And the marketing, the people in marketing are so creative and come up with these great ideas. And the one woman, Amanda, who came up with the Snowball idea, she said egg custard. She told me egg custard is the flavor that most Baltimoreans like the most. And I said I can make a beer that tastes like a Snowball. It doesn't make any sense to me. But then when I slept on a little bit, I thought it through, and I said, wait a second, this could be really amazing, because to me what happens is, the consumer takes ownership of the product. Like, that's my dessert. That's my favorite thing in the world. And they're making a beer out of it. This is amazing. I can't believe this is going to happen. And then, it's on me to say, all right, I got to make sure I don't let them down. I make sure they're not disappointed. Make sure this beer tastes like the Snowball, or at least makes them, takes them to some place in their mind. It could even be last week. I've gotten a Snowball down the street, but there's an emotional connection. And it could be in any local market where you take whatever, local product or local, sports team or theme or whatever it might be, and make that into a beer and give that person two things to love about it. They love the beer and the product itself, but then they love it that it was already theirs to begin with, and you just gave it to them in another form that they can now, celebrate with their friends or family. And I mean, just a brilliant sort of concept that we were able to execute really well, and it's gotten, it's done well for us. So we're really proud of it, really happy that we were able to do that.
So just a couple questions. Snowball Summer treat in Baltimore. Seasonal beers are important at your brewery and in many others. You're thinking several seasons out in terms of creating what you're going to sell next year, maybe even the year after.
Yeah, I mean, so next summer we have we've been doing a summer seasonal for the past 4 years, I believe, called Smooth Sail, which is an American wheat ale with a little hint of citrus, and it's seen its time come and gone. So we're looking to come up with new ideas, and low calorie, low carb is sort of a very popular way to go right now. It's very exciting brand type style of beer right now. So we're going to do a can release later this month with a prototype for that beer. So we'll sort of test that out and get some feedback on the flavors. We have some key lime in there and some Citra hops and Simcoe cryo hops. And does that aroma, does that flavor balance work? Does everybody really like it, or can we tweak it a little bit? So it gives us an opportunity to sort of plan. We already know we're making that beer, but this is sort of a fine tuning of it. Then to take it a step backward, we'll be doing a sort of a brown ale with maple and I forget what else next fall, which could lead to a full seasonal winter beer, maybe the following year or year after that. So yeah, we do what we can to sort of be looking forward when we have the time, the opportunity, and certainly try to plan 18 months ahead if we can. It doesn't always work out that way, but we try to be as proactive as possible and say, hey, you know what, that didn't work at all. Let's get rid of that idea and let's try something else. But we're usually pretty good. Marketing team usually comes up with concepts that are usually executable, that will where the beer will meet the expectation.
Consumer tastes change over time. Folks get more mindful of issues around health and wellness and responsibility in terms of their consumption of alcohol. Beer has always been in sort of the low calorie, low carb space. Beer is also moving more and more into the low alcohol and no alcohol space. More and more, you see some brands coming to the United States. Always been big in some other countries in Europe and around other parts of the world, but that low and no alcohol is coming to the United States. I don't know if HEAVY-Seas has any plans to make some, but do you see that in craft? Do you see a movement towards that low and no space?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The beer that we're working on is 4% alcohol. I don't know how much lower we'll see with a craft product. Going back in my own past, I made a beer called Lafayette's Escape back at the General Lafayette Inn, probably was 2007. That was 1.9% alcohol. It was the highest rated low alcohol beer in the world for about 6 months on Beer Advocate or Rate Beer, something like that. But I couldn't get anybody to buy it. Nobody wanted it. What happened, man? You screwed up. Like, no, what I was trying to do is trying to keep, whatever. Okay, I'm ahead of my time, or I'm behind my time, or I'm in the wrong continent. But yeah, I mean, people are clamoring for low alcohol, low ABV, low carb, low calorie products that meet a healthy lifestyle. And yeah, we're certainly not afraid of them. And it's some new brewing techniques. There's a lot of science, some enzymes, different things that we have to look at to produce these kind of things. So from a craft perspective, they're no less interesting than some of the other beers we're making. It's just a different art that we're trying to chase here. So yeah, we definitely see it.
So we only have time for a couple more questions, and I see another from a viewer here. Speaking of low alcohol, speaking of low carbs, Does Heavy Seas have any plans to dip its toe in the seltzer market? And is that worth it? Seltzer's a big deal in beer these days.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject. I can't really, I can't speak to that from a Heavy Seas perspective. What I can tell you is if we were to decide to do that, we're prepared to do so. So from a technical standpoint, we have done all the research and all the testing. But right now we have no plans to brew or release a seltzer. But we've done the homework and are ready for it if we should go that path. But right now, no plans for that.
All right, 2 questions left. 25th anniversary coming next year. Big milestone for any business. Lots of plans around the 25th anniversary?
Well, I'm only planning the beer, so that's all I can really speak to right now. In fact, right now that the 25th anniversary beer is sort of a barley wine of sorts that has been aging in bourbon barrels since I think since before COVID started. And then not this Friday, but next Friday, we're going to be picking up 105 Sagamore rye barrels from our neighbors down the street in South Baltimore. And we're going to give that beer a second barrel aging in a different, so it'll be bourbon barrel aged and rye barrel aged. It'll be 15.5% alcohol, and hopefully people will remember our 25th anniversary, but maybe they won't. So we're gonna give them a beer to celebrate with for sure.
At 15%, they might not remember the anniversary.
Yeah.
So last question. Well, it's kind of a 2-parter. The first is, what advice do you have for anyone who's interested in brewing? Any advice?
Interested in becoming a brewer, or just advice?
Becoming a brewer, yeah.
Know what your goals are, what your expectations are. I see a lot of young people who decide they want to become brewers because they want to make their own special beer. Being a brewer is really more about cleaning and being technically sound and doing your homework. It's a really difficult job physically. It keeps you in shape for one, and if you like working on your feet and you like hard work and getting dirty, if you like fixing things, being a brewer requires a lot of repair work and sort of coming up with solutions to problems that might be non-traditional or strange. So if you like fixing things, if you like a multi-faceted job that employs a lot of different skills and backgrounds, then brewing's great. But if you just want to be a chef, then don't become a brewer. You'll be disappointed.
You got to be nimble. You got to be flexible. You got to have a passion. Last question. We have a lot of viewers here on this web series who are members of Congress, work in congressional offices. If you had a minute to sort of tell them what was important to you as a brewer, as an employee of Heavy Seas, what would it be?
Good question. The excise tax break has been invaluable. I mean, I can't stress enough how important that has been to our business and keeping these people employed. Breweries are we're real people too. I mean, it's we go to work in the morning and we go home to families at night, and it's not glamorous. It's hard work, and just keep looking out for us and enjoying our products, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
But you're doing something you love. The work that folks who are watching this discussion do is important to you. That excise tax relief ends December 31st. So we're really hoping that it will continue. It sounds like it's important to the business. So
yeah.
Chris Leonard from Heavy Seas Beer, thank you very much for being the sort of guinea pig here on the first installment of You Ought to Know a Beer Industry Employee. For those on the So thank you very much, Chris.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Honored to be here.
For those of you who are watching us, we plan through the months of September and October several more of these discussions with different folks in the beer industry. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion. We hope you'll come back for the next one. Watch your email inboxes for the invitation to the next installment of this webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. Again, Chris Leonard from Heavy Seas Beer, thank you so much. We'll see you again next time. Thank you all.